On the 1st of November 2018, Simon Sorgenfri, a Swedish religious scientist at Södertörn University with a focus on studies of Islam and Sufism, was invited by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community Sweden to deliver a lecture at Nasr Mosque, the first ever mosque in Sweden. Sorgenfri was heartily welcomed by the Ahmadiyya Muslim community's members and was given a brief rundown on the community's history both worldwide and in Sweden. The scientist started his lecture in front of a room full of men and women, both members and non-members of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. The lecture began with the tales of early Islam in Europe and how the religion eventually reached the country of Sweden. Interesting facts and stories like the first Muslim settlers in Sweden and the earliest Muslim organizations in Sweden were presented to the audience. The audience also partook in an active discussion with the scientist, who has also written a book about Islam in Sweden.
I was interested in poetry, and I read the Persian Sufi poet Maulana Rumi, and I got really interested in Sufism and in Sufi literature. And then to understand the poetry better, I began studying the history of religions and especially Islamic studies.
The book was at display at the lecture and was available for the audience to take home and read. He eventually mentioned the role of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in establishing and spreading Islam in the country.
Since I developed an interest in Islam and the history of Islam and Muslims in Sweden, the Ahmadiyya movement is very important in Sweden because it was one of the first Muslim or Islamic communities to establish itself in Sweden in the 1950s. And the mosque where we are now is also the first and oldest existing mosque in Sweden. So when it comes to Islam in Sweden, the Ahmadi movement is really important and interesting in many ways.
The more than an hour-long lecture was considered a huge success by both Sorgenfri and the Ahmadiyya Muslim community members, where both the parties got to learn a lot more on the subject.
It was fun, of course, to tell the story of Islam in Sweden in the first mosque and in front of the oldest congregation. So it was good to be here.
At the end of the event, the audience got a chance to personally head up to the author and ask the questions. MT International, Sweden Studios.